Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grandstand Sports Data. In today's video, we're giving you the round one preview between the Orlando Magic and the Boston Celtics. We'll be covering the statistical breakdown, the fundamental breakdown. We'll also go over our model's predictions along with some of the betting lines in this series. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so let's break down this matchup statistically, just starting out. This chart's going to compare both Orlando and Boston across key advanced metrics when it comes to the NBA, and it's clear that we have a heavyweight versus middleweight matchup here. Let's first move to the power ratings from Grandstand Sports Data and Basketball Reference. You can see top three in both power rating and that Basketball Reference for Boston, while Orlando is middle of the pack. This alone sets the tone. Celtics are clearly the stronger team just going into this matchup. If we move on to some of the offensive metrics now, you can see there's a major gap. Boston's second in offensive rating, Orlando's 27th. The Celtics are more efficient. They're top six in terms of efficient field goal percentage and turn it over less, second in turnover percentage. That's a sharp contrast to Orlando, who's bottom tier in both of those areas. Not good. Defense now. Here's where Orlando holds ground. Shockingly, they're second in defensive rating, better than Boston's fifth. But Boston being fifth, they're not bad, obviously. So they force turnovers and they defend the three very well. We're talking about Orlando now, but they foul a lot. 29th in the NBA when it comes to free throws per field goal attempt, which could hurt versus a disciplined offense like Boston. The differentials now. Let's move on to some of those key stats. Boston's net rating is a plus 9.5. That's title contending profile. I've been saying this throughout the whole season. Orlando is nearly flat at about that minus 0.2. Usually that will indicate that the team is not even a playoff team. So they kind of got away with being in the Eastern Conference. Now, even though their defense is elite, they can't score enough to consistently stay in games. And that's what I would say. Also, Banchero being out for most of the season, not most of the season, I would say about, call it half. Let's meet halfway and say half. That didn't help them in terms of these numbers that you see. You got to remember this is an accumulation of the season. But takeaway here, Boston has the firepower and the balance. Orlando can defend but lacks scoring efficiency. So if you're betting this, you're asking yourself, can Orlando's defense keep it within the number? Or will Boston's offense, like their offensive execution, overwhelm them over four quarters? So basically what I'm trying to say here is maybe you can pick your spots in some of these situations, maybe Orlando at home, to cover the spread. So in those single games, not necessarily series numbers, but in those single game metrics, you can maybe look for a little bit of an edge when it comes to Orlando on the spread. They're probably going to be the underdog in every single one of these games. Okay, so let's dive deeper into the matchup now and look at some of the fundamentals, the player quality, the pace, and playoff production. I'm going to first start with the player win shares on both sides. This is a playoff resume versus playoff potential. So Boston's projected rotation owns nearly 58 playoff win shares. You can see 58.1 versus Orlando's 8.6. And why? Because they're led by Tatum, Brown, Horford, all these guys that have that playoff experience. Orlando on the other side, just an 8.6 total with no one over 4. That's a huge experience gap. That is humongous in this series. The win shares per 48, looking at that metric, this is a quality efficiency stat. So most of Boston's guys are well above that .100, a benchmark for solid playoff contributors. Meanwhile, several Orlando's players are sub .050. Franz Wagner, he's at .203, so some people may say, hey, that's good. It's a little misleading because look at that win shares. That's 1.1, which is kind of telling you that it was a very small sample size. So even him, he's going to need a little bit more playoff experience to either come back to earth or he's a really good playoff performer and that number may jump up. My guess, and being in the projections world, he's going to come back to earth. He's going to come back to earth in this series. Now, looking at the pace, both teams are in the bottom two in pace. Does that mean that they're bad? No. This likely means that a more half-court grinded out style, fewer possessions, which can then favor the better execution team. That favors Boston again, in my opinion. Home court, do we really have to tell you much about that? That stat is labeled in orange, which means it has a high correlation to win percentage in the playoffs, and Boston owns that metric. So we don't overreact to home court in every spot, but in the playoffs, in Boston, it's a real edge. Boston's crowd is not bad. That's especially true when you combine it with the Celtics' experience and the ability to close games late. The takeaway here for the fundamental edge: Boston has a massive playoff experience edge, more efficient scorers, and that home court. So Orlando's young core may flash a little bit, but betting on them here is essentially betting on a talent leap in real time against a battle tested group. That's a tall ask. Now we're looking at the handicapping factor results. What is this? It's basically a wet dream for us sports bettors, right? So we're going to break it down. This chart is showing us which statistical factors have actually made money in the playoffs over the last 5 years and which team holds the edge in those categories. Well, let's start with turnover percentage. That's going to be held by Boston, and it's delivered $8.94 for every $1 bet. So remember, when I say $8.94 for every $1 bet, that means you take the amount that you bet on a game, whether that's $20, $25, $100, and you multiply it by this 8.94, and you'll get your profitability. That's what that means if you're new here at Grandstand Sports Data. Now, Boston also owns the edge in offensive rating, efficient field goal percentage, and free throw per field goal attempt differential. Huge metrics. What about Orlando now? They do hold the edge in some metrics as well. Defensive rebounding. So look for this number to be actually a if you're looking at the defensive rebounds, Boston always shoots from the outside, where Orlando's going to be hanging out underneath that net. If Boston has poor shooting nights, look for Orlando to cover some spreads on that. It's just, how do you know when they will have those off shooting nights? Also, turnover percentage differential. That's been huge in terms of profitability, second best. Orlando holds the edge there. So while Boston's great at limiting turnovers, Orlando forces a ton of them. So that combination has paid out. So what is this telling us? In 4 of the 6 profitable playoff betting factors, either Boston holds the edge or they're in favorable matchups, especially on efficiency and ball security. Orlando shows some strength defensively, but the trends tilt strongly toward Boston across historical profitable angles. Takeaway here: this isn't just about raw stats, it's about which edge actually cashes tickets, and Boston owns most of them. Now, moving on to the spreads. We're going to move on and take a look at how these teams have performed against the spread this season, and more importantly, how the market has priced them. Orlando on the left side, they finished dead even at 41 and 41 against the spread, but still lost bettors about $3.69 for every $1 bet, or they were down 45% for your portfolio. That tells us they were slightly overvalued in certain spots or inconsistent in covering their number. Boston on the other side, despite being one of the best teams straight up, they went 40 and 42 and lost even more for bettors. They lost about $5.60 for every $1 bet, or they were down 6.8 in your portfolio in terms of percentages. Why? They were often laying inflated spreads due to their dominance, and the market adjusted accordingly. So the market kind of got them right. The trend lines, though, that jacked black line, or the jagged black line that you see from Boston in team spread, this performance week by week. So notice the trend here for both teams. You can see it's jagged line for both of them. Orlando was volatile early, but steady down the stretch, while Boston was a money loser for most of the season until they made a late push in the final quarter. The key takeaway from this, though, from a betting lens, neither team was profitable against the spread. Boston's value is often baked into that line, so remember that you're paying a premium to bet them. Meanwhile, Orlando has had random stretches of value but no consistent edge. So for this matchup, I'd be cautious laying big numbers with Boston. The books know what they are, and don't blindly bet Orlando thinking they're a live dog. Their against the spread record is just average with slightly negative return. Now, moving on to those money lines. This is the straight up wins and losses, not factoring in the spread. Orlando on the left side, they went 41 and 41 on the money line, but you'd be down about 94 cents for every $1 bet. That's a negative return on your portfolio of 1.1% if you bet them every game. Uh, so that's telling us that the market had them mostly priced correctly, maybe even slightly undervalued down the stretch. Late in the season, the Magic saw a spike, though, in profitability, probably due to short underdog wins or line value once they found a rhythm. But overall, they were still a coin flip team. Boston, on the other side, is where it gets a little interesting. They were 62 and 20 straight up, elite win percentage, right? But they still lost money on the money line. They were down $2.80 for every $1 bet, and their minus 3.4% return on investment was not great for your portfolio. Why? The prices were just too steep. You had to pay a premium every single game to back them, and that premium did not pay off. So the Celtics were so dominant that books inflated their money line price, making them a poor value prop most nights. So that's a classic case of a great team, but a bad bet. So the takeaway here is this. This is why blindly betting favorites like Boston can quietly just drain your bankroll, even when they win often. So while Orlando wasn't a gold mine neither, they showed flashes of value as an underdog late in the season. So the sharp angle here is that if you're betting a dog like Orlando, you better be selective and hit when the market underestimates them. So if you're betting a favorite like Boston, you better make sure that the juice isn't killing you. That's going to be the scale, the balance of scale in this matchup. Now moving on to the series, and here's everything that comes together. You're talking about the betting lines, the prediction from our model, and then the official plays for the model. The series odds, Boston's the massive favorite. It's around minus 5,000 on the money line and laying about minus 2.5 games on the spread. That means odds makers expect a gentleman's sweep or a clean 4 games to nothing sweep. Orlando though, you're getting plus 1,600 if you want to take a big swing, but the implied win probability is just over 5 to 6%, which shows how steep the hill is. It's just, I don't know if it's possible. They would need a huge injury, maybe even a couple huge injuries from Boston. The model prediction, we've got Boston winning the series 4 games to 1. There's an 85% chance, 85% win percentage for those 10,000 Monte Carlo simulations that we run, and that lines up with the books, but gives Orlando just a 15% puncher's chance. So the model's got Boston on the spread to cover those 2.5 games. Also has Boston to win outright, and then they have the under the 5.5 games. The takeaway here, everything in this matchup, the metrics, the money, the model, it all points towards Boston. They're going to dominate the series. Unless you're betting a wild long shot angle on Orlando, this is a spot where you ride with the favorite or pass the series entirely. Or I would even say, remember, I kind of gave you snippets throughout this video that maybe if you can pick some spots, I would say Orlando at home to cover some spreads, and you're hoping for a poor Boston shooting night. Maybe that's game 3, maybe game 4. I would say that if you're looking for the edge, it's maybe game 3, that first game, getting into that new building. Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in to the NBA first round playoff preview. We hope you had a great time and picked up some awesome information. Now, don't forget to subscribe to Grandstand Sports Data for more great shows like this one. Also, don't forget to give this video a like and share it with your friends. And leave a comment down below on who you think is going to win this series. That's all for now, and we'll see you guys in the next one.